from All Creatures Great and Small. That Christmas Eve night, I had fallen asleep to the sound of the great bells in the church tower down the street pealing for midnight mass. But the ringing that woke me just a few hours later was a sharper, shriller sound. Last night before going to bed, and just as the church bells began, I had closed the door of Skeldale House behind me and walked into the marketplace. Nothing stirred in the white square, stretching smooth and cold and empty under the moon, and there was a Dickens look about the ring of the houses and shops put together long before anybody thought of town planning. Tall and short, fat and thin, squashed and crazily around their cobbles, their snow-burdened roofs jagged and uneven against the frosty sky. As I walked, the snow crunching under my feet, the bells clanging, the sharp air tingling in my nostrils, the wonder and mystery of Christmas enveloped me in a great wave. Peace on earth, goodwill towards men. The words became meaningful as never before, and I saw myself suddenly as a tiny particle in the scheme of things. Darrowby, the farmers, the animals, and me seemed for the first time like a warm, comfortable entity. I hadn't been drinking, but I almost floated up the stairs to bed. Helen was asleep, and as I crawled between the sheets beside her, I was still wallowing in my Yuletide euphoria. We'll have a long lie-in, maybe till 9 in the morning, and then a lazy, glorious day, a hiatus in our busy life. As I drifted into sleep, it was as though I was surrounded by smiling faces of my clients looking down at me with an all-embracing benevolence. But now there was a bell which wouldn't stop. Must be the alarm. But as I pawed at the clock, the noise continued, and I saw that it was only 6 o'clock. It was the phone, of course. I lifted the receiver. A metallic voice, crisp and very wide awake, jarred in my ear. "Is that the vet?" "Yes, Harriet speaking," I mumbled. "This is Brown, Willett Hill. I've got a cow down with milk fever. I want you here quick." "Right, I'll see to it." "Don't take too long." Then a click at the far end of the line. I rolled on my back and stared at the ceiling. It was Christmas Day, and I hadn't bargained for this fellow jerking me brutally back to reality, and not a word of regret or apology. "No, sorry to get you out of bed or anything else. Never mind, Merry Christmas. It was just a bit hard." Mr. Brown was waiting for me in the darkness of the farmyard. He was a gingery man of about 40 with high cheekbones set in a sharp-featured, clear-skinned face. Red hair peeped from under a check cap. He didn't say good morning, but nodded briefly, then jerked his head in the direction of the barn. "She's in there," was all he said. He watched in silence as I gave the injections, and it wasn't until I was putting the empty bottles into my pocket that he turned towards me to speak. Could it be that he was going to ask me in for a nice hot cup of tea? "You know," he said, as I stood ankle-deep in the snow, the frosty air nipping at my ears, "I've had a few of these cases lately. Maybe there's something wrong with my routine. Do you think I'm steaming up my cows too much?" "It's quite possible." I hurried towards the car. One thing I wasn't going to do was deliver a lecture on animal husbandry at this moment. My hand was on the door handle when he said, "I'll give you another ring if she's not up by dinner time. And there's one other thing. That was a hell of a bill I had from you fellas last month. So tell your boss not to be so savage with his pen." Then he turned and walked quickly towards the house. Well, that was nice, I thought, as I drove away. Not even thanks or goodbye, just a complaint and a promise to haul me away from my roast goose, if necessary. A sudden wave of anger surged in me. Bloody farmers! There were some miserable devils among them. Mr. Brown had doused my festive feeling as effectively as if he had thrown a bucket of water over me. As I mounted the steps to Skeldale House, the early morning darkness had paled to a shivery gray. Helen met me in the passage. She was carrying a tray. "I'm so sorry, Jim," she said. "There's another urgent job. It's old Mr. Kirby. He's very worried about his nanny goat." "Nanny goat?" "Yes. He says she's choking." "Choking? How the heck can she be choking?" I shouted. "I really don't know, and I wish you wouldn't shout at me, Jim. It's not my fault." In an instant, I was engulfed by shame. Here I was, in bad temper, taking it out on my wife. It is a common reaction for vets to blame the hapless person who passes on an unwanted message. But I am not proud of it. I held out my hand and Helen took it. "I'm sorry," I said sheepishly. My feeling of goodwill was at a very low ebb. Mr. Kirby was a retired farmer, but he had sensibly taken a cottage with a bit of land where he kept enough stock to occupy his time. A cow, a few pigs, and his beloved goats. He had always had goats, even when he was running his dairy herd. He had a thing about them. The cottage was in a village high up in the dale. Mr. Kirby met me at the gate. Lad," he said, "I'm right sorry to be bothering you this early in the morning, and Christmas and all, but I didn't have no choice. Dorothy's real bad." He led the way to a stone shed which had been converted into a row of pens. Behind the wire of one of them, a large white goat peered out at us anxiously, and as I watched her, she gulped, gave a series of retching coughs, then stood trembling, saliva drooling from her mouth. Mr. Kirby turned to me wide-eyed. "You see, I had to get you out, didn't I? If I left her till tomorrow, she'd be a goner." "You're right, Mr. Kirby," I replied. "You couldn't leave her. There's something in her throat." We went into the pen, and as the old man held the goat against the wall, I tried to open her mouth. She didn't like it very much, and as I pried her jaws apart, she startled me with a loud, long, drawn-out, human-sounding cry. As the sharp back teeth tried to nibble me, I poked a finger deep into the pharynx. There was something there, all right. I could just touch it, but I couldn't get a hold of it. Then the animal began to throw her head about, and I had to come out. I stood there, saliva dripping from my hand, and looked thoughtfully at Dorothy. I turned to the farmer. "You know, this is a bit baffling. I can feel something in the back of her throat. I'd been expecting to find a bit of twig in there. It's funny what a goat will pick up when she's pottering around outside, but it's soft, like cloth." "Aye, it's a rummin, isn't it?" The old man ran a gentle hand along the animal's back. "Do you think she'll get rid of it herself? Maybe it'll just slip down?" "No, it's stuck fast, and I've got to get it out soon because she's beginning to blow up. Look there," I pointed to the goat's left side, bulged by the tympanic rumen, and as I did so, Dorothy began another paroxysm of coughs, which seemed almost to tear her apart. Mr. Kirby looked at me with a mute appeal, but just at that moment I didn't see what I could do. "I'm going to get my torch from the car. Maybe I can see something to explain this." The old man held the torch as I once more pulled the goat's mouth open, and I noticed something under the tongue, a thin, dark band. "I can see what's holding the thing now," I cried. "It's hooked around the tongue with a string or something." Carefully, I pushed my forefinger under the band and began to pull. It wasn't a string. It began to stretch as I pulled carefully at it, like elastic. I kept up a gentle traction, and very slowly the mysterious obstruction came sliding up over the back of the tongue and into the mouth. And when it came within reach, I let go of the elastic, grabbed the sodden mass, and hauled it forth. It seemed as if there was no end to it, a long snake of dripping material nearly 2 feet long. But at last I had it out on the straw of the pen. Mr. Kirby seized it, held it up, and then he gave a sudden cry. "God help us," he says, "it's me summer drawers." "Your what?" "Me summer drawers. I don't like them long johns when weather gets warmer, and I always change into these little short uns. Mrs. washed them and had to finish, and Dorothy must have got them off the line." He held up the tattered shorts and regarded them ruefully. "My God, they've seen better days, but I reckon Dorothy's feddled them at this time." He gave a long, great shout of laughter, and I joined in as I watched him. He went in for quite a long time, and when we had finished laughing, he was leaning weakly against the wire netting. "Me poor old drawers," he gasped, then leaned over and patted the goat's head. "But as long as you're all right, lass, I'm not worried." "Oh, she'll be okay," I pointed to her left flank. "You can see her stomach's going down already." As I spoke, Dorothy belched pleasurably and began to nose interestedly at her hay rack. The farmer gazed at her fondly. "Isn't that grand to see? She's ready for her grub again." "It's amazing what ruminants can carry around in their stomachs," I said. "I once found a bicycle tire inside a cow when I was operating for something else. The tire didn't seem to be bothering her in the least." "I see," Mr. Kirby rubbed his chin. "So Dorothy might have wandered around with me drawers inside of her for years." "It's possible, but you'd never have known what became of them." "By God, that's right," Mr. Kirby said, and for a moment I thought he was going to start giggling again. But he mastered himself and seized my arm. "I don't know what I'm keeping you out there for, lad. You must come in and have a bit of Christmas cake." Inside the tiny living room of the cottage, I was ushered to the best chair by the fireside, where 2 rough logs blazed and crackled. "Bring cake out for Mr. Harriet, Mother," the farmer cried as he rummaged in the pantry. He reappeared with a bottle of whiskey at the same time as his wife bustled in carrying a cake thickly laid with icing and ornamented with colored spangles, toboggans, and reindeers. Mr. Kirby unscrewed the stopper. "You know, Mother, we're lucky to have such men as this to come out on a Christmas morning to help us." "Aye, we are at that." The old lady cut a thick slice of cake and placed it on a plate by the side of an enormous wedge of Wensleydale cheese. Her husband, meanwhile, was pouring my drink, sloshing it into the glass as if it were lemonade. He would have filled it to the brim if I hadn't stopped him. Drink in hand, cake on knee, I looked across the farmer and his wife, who were sitting in upright kitchen chairs, watching me with quiet benevolence. The two faces had something in common, a kind of beauty. You could find faces like that only in the country, deeply wrinkled and weathered, clear-eyed, alight with a cheerful serenity. I raised my glass. "A happy Christmas to you both." The old couple nodded and replied smilingly, "And the same to you, Mr. Harriet." "Aye, and thanks again, lad," said Mr. Kirby. "We're right grateful to you for running out here to save old Dorothy. We'd maybe mucked up your day for you, but it would have mucked up ours if we'd lost the old lass, wouldn't it, Mother?" "Don't worry," I said. "You haven't spoiled anything for me. In fact, you've made me realize again that it really is Christmas." And as I looked around the little room with the decorations hanging from the low beam ceiling, I could feel the emotions of last night surging slowly back, a warmth creeping through me that had nothing to do with the whiskey. I took a bite of the cake and followed it with a moist slice of cheese. When I had first come to Yorkshire, I had been aghast when I offered this unheard-of combination. But time had brought wisdom and had discovered the mixture when chewing boldly together was exquisite. And strangely, I had also found that there was nothing more suitable for washing it finely over the tonsils than a draught of raw whiskey. "You don't mind the wireless, Mr. Harriet?" Mrs. Kirby said. "We always like to have it on Christmas morning to hear the old hymns, but I'll turn it off if you like." "No, please leave it on. It sounds grand." I turned to look at the old radio with its chipped wooden veneer, the ornate scroll work over the worn fabric. It must have been one of the earliest models, and it gave off a tinny sound, but the singing of the church choir was none the less sweet. "Hark the Herald Angels Sing" flooded the little room, mingling with the splutter of the logs and soft voices of the old people. As the choir started on "Once in Royal David City," I finished my whiskey and put up only a feeble resistance when the farmer plied the bottle again. Through the small window, I could see the bright berries of a holly tree pushing through their covering snow. It was really a shame to have to leave here, and it was sadly that I drained my glass for a second time and scooped up the last crumbs of cake and icing from my plate. Mr. Kirby came out with me at the gate of the cottage. He stopped and held out his hand. "Thank you, lad. I'm right grateful," he said, "and all the very best to you." For a moment, the rough, dry palm rasped across mine. Then I was in my car, starting the engine. I looked at my watch. It was still only 9:30, but the early sunshine was sparkling from a sky of palest blue. Beyond the village, the road climbed steeply, then curved around the rim of the valley in a wide arc, revealing the great expanse of the plain of York before me. I always slowed down here. There was always something different to see. But today, the vast checkerboard of fields and farms and woods stood out with clarity I had never seen before. Maybe it was because there was a holiday, and down there was no factory chimney smoke, no lorries belched fumes, but the distance was magically foreshortened in the clear, frosty air, and I felt I could reach out and touch the familiar landmarks below. I looked back at the enormous white billows and folds of the fells, crowding close, one upon another, into the blue distance, every crevasse uncannily defined, the highest summits glittering where the sun touched them. I could see the village with the Kirby's cottage at the end. I had found Christmas and peace and goodwill and everything back there. Farmers. They were the salt of the earth. Merry Christmas, friends.